Marinaro Brunchin with Tony Marinaro, presented by Cherry River Hard Seltzer. Only 90 calories, natural flavors, no preservatives. Now available in Quebec grocery stores and the beer store. We've been doing this over, I would say, the last month or so on Sunday mornings. We're having a lot of fun with it because it's our opportunity to ask you for any Habs questions you may have. And I, along with my guest, we try to tackle as many of them and respond to as many of them as possible. And we do this live on Facebook. Sharing is caring. Share the video and comment your Habs questions. Joining me this morning on this Sunday morning, good Sunday, to Brian Wilde from Global TV Montreal. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm just kind of amazed. How do you make that drink go around in circles so smoothly? You've got like magic touch on your hands, Tony. I can barely see how you do it.
Trade secrets, my son. Trade secrets. That's why this podcast is different than all the rest. Brian, it was another game and another loss, but I have to tell you, although it was frustrating at times, I thought it was an entertaining hockey game last night in Nashville. I really enjoyed it.
That's all I ask for right now, too, Tony. I mean, nobody really even cares about wins and losses. And if we're being totally honest, losses are better than wins if you want to draft high. So just entertain me. Just decide that 5-4 is more entertaining than low event 2-1. Let me see some rookies get better. Let me get some hope for the future, and I'll survive this. But if you're going to shut down the game and put out all of these veterans that are going to be traded eventually or not be a part of anything better in the future, I'm going to be bored silly. So, yeah, I agree with you. I liked last night. I can survive last night if they keep repeating that.
Dominic Ducharme probably is in a catch-22, though. Let's be honest here. So a new VP of Hockey Ops comes in. His name is Jeff Gorton. Until he hires a general manager, he's going to be pretty much the only one that's going to be making the decisions as to what this team may look like or may not look like over the next month or so here. He told the coach he's already safe between now and the rest of the season. We have a feeling that there are players who are veterans that are probably going to be traded, especially a guy like Ben Sherratt, you would think, who's in the final year of his contract. His value right now is at a high because he's playing not too bad on a terrible team. They played the heck out of him last night, Brian, but, you know, they probably want to trade away veterans, so they need to showcase them. But at the same time, you want to develop youngsters. And if they're not getting ice time, so he needs to find that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing with that showcasing. It's a great theory. And, it worked when Brown played with Lemieux and Semenko and Hughes and Hunter played with Gretzky. But to showcase a guy, he's got to do well. And so showcasing, if you're just losing all the time and adding, plus minus minuses to your ledger, it doesn't always work perfectly on a bad team. So it's great in concept, but it doesn't always work. And I think you're right about Sherratt. He's definitely at 29 minutes getting showcased, unrestricted free agent. And I'm going to add a name here. I think David Savard might be getting showcased. 26 minutes for him. That's a lot of minutes for him. So, yeah, it's a balancing act for Ducharme. He's got to not worry about wins, but he has to worry that Gorton actually wants veterans to be showcased, that he maybe wants to move on to another team, but rookies getting a chance for the future as well. So you're absolutely right. It's a real balancing act for him to achieve.
All right, okay. I talked about frustrating, and I know I have a feeling a lot of the questions are going to be about this. I have said, and I have maintained, and I will continue to say that I would play Cole Caulfield in Laval for the rest of the season. I'm willing to go that far, okay? Because I want him to dominate at that level before playing in the National Hockey League. Having said that, last night, Cole Caulfield had a good game. He had a couple of assists. He looked really good on a power play, which led to Nick Suzuki tying the game at 1. And then later on, the Canadiens had a 5-on-3 power play, and Cole Caulfield didn't see the ice.
Yeah, that was probably the most frustrating moment for me, is that he looked so good on that previous power play, and Poehling looked good too, and he couldn't get back on the ice either on the 5-on-3. And so, it's supposed to be a merit-based system always in the NHL. And I think, merit alone, Suzuki got his merit reward on the 5-on-3 as he's established now as a top C. But the merit wasn't there for Poehling's work. It wasn't there for Caulfield's work. And to your original point on the overall there in Caulfield where he should play, I'm a little bit mixed bag on that one, because I can see your Laval theory, and I would be 100% with you if he was struggling very badly in Montreal, but Caulfield's doing okay now. I think he's got 5 points in his last 6 games. That's
He does.
okay. But what I really want to see is wherever he plays, let him play a lot. Like if you're the head coach and you just can't see your way to putting him out there for 17, 18, 19, 20 minutes in a 5-on-3, then I agree 100%. If Gorton can't convince Ducharme and Ducharme can't see his way to putting the kid out there for him in all circumstances to improve his game, then definitely he needs to go back to Laval. He's got to play 20 minutes. He's got to. I mean, this is the complaint, Tony, everybody has about the Canadiens, right? They don't know how to develop their pros.
Yeah.
And I don't know myself. Like, I'm not going to pretend I'm a genius. But one thing I do know is every vocation in the world, whether it be teacher, doctor, whatever, a doctor's not going to get better at his profession if he's just watching other people do surgeries. A teacher's not going to get better unless they're actually doing the teaching. So wherever you play him, Laval or Montreal, he must play. The secret to learning is in the do, not the watch, not the show. And
I'll take it a step further. I don't pretend to be an expert either in player development, but here's my general rule of thumb. If you're McDavid or Crosby, Ovechkin or McKinnon, you can skip a step and you can go from, junior hockey to the National Hockey League or KHL to the NHL as an 18-year-old. Mm-hmm. If you're not, for the most part,
I agree.
You should not skip steps.
I agree.
And Cole Caulfield, as much as we marvel at his major league wrist shot, his ability to get open and score goals, he's not in that category. So I would not skip a step if I were them, and I'll just end it at that. We'll get to your questions. Sharing is caring. You can share the video and you comment on your Habs questions. Brian, I want to try and get to as many questions as possible, which I know is something that you're going to relish because I believe you are a man of the people, and I see what you do on Twitter, and you engage and respond to a lot of fans who have questions. This one from Ethan Bondi. Do you think Jeff Gorton will rebuild? Brian, I know you wrote a piece on this on Call of the Wilde a couple of days ago. For those who didn't have a chance to read it, your thoughts?
Well, I hope it's funny because on Friday, he never really got asked that, did he? And I was disappointed. I was disappointed that he never really got asked, Gorton, I'm talking about, how extensive and deep and how long this rebuild might be. Because you and I are on the same page here. The only way you're going to be a champion is if you rebuild for a little bit longer. The Canadiens have proven that you can't just draft 1 year at number 3. Because in the year Galchenyuk was number 3, Yakupov was 1, Murray was 2, and Reinhart was 4. That draft had, of the first 4 picks, it was bad. And then in the Galchenyuk year, same thing. In the Galchenyuk year, that wasn't Matthews. That wasn't McDavid.
Riley went at 5. Forsberg went at 11, and Thomas Hertl went, I don't remember where he went, but later in the first round. But Brian, my sentiments exactly, pardon me for cutting you off for a second there. I've always maintained that to do a rebuild properly, it's going to take about 4 years, because if you want to get out of it in a year or two, if you have the misfortune of being part of 1 or 2 very average drafts, it's not going to help you. Now the Leafs, the Leafs tried a 2-year rebuild, and they got Matthews at 1 and Marner at 4.
Awesome.
Or a 3-year rebuild and got Nylander at 7 or 8 or whatever he was. And that's enough. They got lucky that they were part of 3 very good drafts. And so when people ask me, how long does the rebuild, how long should it last? Well, long enough for them to get the players that they can build around.
Yeah. And you and I have discussed this before. And the bottom line is pretty simple. People can point to Buffalo. They can point to New Jersey. They can point to people that tried and were down a long time, like Arizona. And they'd be right. It doesn't always work. But the guarantee is that if you don't do it, it definitely doesn't work.
Yeah.
So your chances, if you don't do it, like suck for 3 years, 4 years, so you're drafting top 5 those years, your chance is 0% of getting the best hockey players in the world. And then maybe if you do have 3 or 4 or 5 drafts that are really, really, your top 5, now your chances are 50%. So you take 0% or 50%.
Yeah.
You take a little bit of pain or a lot of pain and then hope for the best. Because you're right about Toronto. It's a great example. And in Buffalo, same thing, but it hasn't come together yet. It takes time, and it only works if you take a lot of pain.
So if I would have the opportunity to speak to Jeff Gorton, my questions, or one of my questions, would be in regards to the rebuild, but it would be in thinking of, if you're going to go the way of a rebuild, what will you be looking at? What will be the reason behind, what will be basically, what will factor in the most? What will be most important in determining yes to rebuild or no to rebuild? And for those who say that this team cannot go through a rebuild because most of their players are signed to long-term contracts and big money, how much of an obstacle would that be for you? And would it be the end-all be-all? And those are some of the things I'd like to know. Mario, go ahead, tackle it.
I got one quick thought on that before you take that question. And that's very simply that the beauty of doing a rebuild is you get those contracts off the books, and they're going to want you to take some of the money, right?
Of course.
So,
or a bad contract in return, but maybe with lesser term.
Exactly. But isn't that okay? You're doing a rebuild.
Fine by me, my man.
I mean, because what really happens when you're doing a rebuild is you got so many young players that you're not up against the cap at all. In fact, if you're going to really dump a lot of players, you're trying hard to get to the floor. So take some
Brian,
back.
a buddy mentioned to me yesterday, he said, well, if they would want to trade Carey Price, they'd have to pick up half the salary. And I said,
cool, fine.
Yeah, and what's the problem?
Exactly.
What's the problem?
Great.
I mean, I'm not going to discredit the merits of Carey Price, but I'm going to tell you this. Carey, at his age and his injuries, his play declining, and his salary, I would much rather have Jake Allen at his age and his health status and his salary, right? And especially in relation to where the Canadiens are.
And whenever that gets approached, I get the feeling from Twitter, everybody looks at it as how mean.
Yeah.
It's not mean. Carey Price would love to go to Edmonton and play with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and maybe win a cup. And would they do it? Hell yeah. Because they got a bad contract on the books in Koskanen. You switch the bad contracts, and the Canadiens pick up half of Carey, and Carey's as happy as he could possibly be. I got a chance to win the Stanley Cup. That's my dream.
If I would be willing,
if I would be willing to bet,
Brian, if I would be willing to bet, I would say that Carey Price would be willing to go to probably most teams right now. And I know a lot of people have told me, yeah, but he never won a cup with the Montreal Canadiens. I don't think he looks at the Montreal Canadiens and thinks he sees a team that's going to win the cup in the next couple of years either.
He already waved it once. Why wouldn't he wave it again?
You're right about that.
He waved it to go to Seattle.
Of
Surely
course.
He's going to wave it to play with Connor McDavid at the age of 34 rather than staying on a team rebuilding for 5 years. I mean, this to me is a no-brainer, and I hope that Gorton thinks about it because Carey's not winning a cup, and I love Carey. You love Carey. We've known him for a long, long time. I was probably the first person that actually interviewed Carey Price, and I've known him for a while. I've seen his character. I love the guy, and I want him to get a chance. I think it'd be awesome. Of course, I love the Oilers too, so I'm a little
listen, I totally understand that, but and the best thing about having Jeff Gorton, of course, is no loyalty to these contracts, no tie-ins. There's no emotions there. He's not the one who drafted these players, developed these players, signed these players, gave extensions to these players, gave them no movements. He's not the one, so he can come in and he can go about business as usual. Okay, let's go back to the questions. I think Mario Giovannitti had one. See if we can bring it up here.
I think Mario's was about Carey.
Okay. If they go the rebuild mode, do you think Price will ask for a trade?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, Carey Price likes one thing more than anything else, and that's winning. That's all he wants. He wants to win.
If they go the rebuild mode, they may actually approach Price before actually Price asks for a trade. Okay. On to more questions we go. We'll get to as many as possible. Ryan, how much of this leadership problem would have been solved if the Canadiens had named a captain in October? Brian?
I'm not sure they have a leadership problem. Do you think they have a leadership problem?
I don't think leadership is among the top problems that they have.
Yeah, I think it's still a veteran-laden room.
I do think it would be good if they had someone who would maybe have the C and step up and talk to them, but I really don't think it makes a difference. Brian, for those who have been listening and watching, I was not high on this team in camp. I picked Toronto to finish first in the division. I picked Florida to finish second. I picked Tampa Bay to finish third. I picked Boston to finish fourth. I picked the Canadiens to finish fifth, a point or two ahead of Ottawa. And where I was surprised in all of this was Detroit and Buffalo. But I'm not surprised how bad the Canadiens are doing.
Yeah, I don't think there's a leadership vacuum right now. I think there's a talent vacuum. The team is built on wingers, and the wingers are great if they got a centerman and puck-moving defenseman to give them the puck. And if they don't, great wingers just skate up and down the ice like this, doing nothing. And that's essentially what we're seeing. So the team is built poorly, and hopefully that changes soon. But I don't think it's a leadership void. I think it's a talent void, and I think it's a coach void as well in terms of system, and obviously special teams is horrendous at 31 for both of them.
Hey, we haven't talked much about what happened last night. Not that it really matters all that much, but for the sake of doing it, Eli Tolvanen, less than 5 minutes into the game, redirects a shot from Matthias Ekholm up and over Jake Allen. The Nashville Predators were all over the Canadiens, I thought, in period number one. In period number two, on the power play, the Canadiens go. Caulfield to Wideman. He finds Suzuki, who lasers a wrist shot to the top of the net. He ties it at one. David Savard pinches in, gets a beautiful pass from Toffoli. There's a rebound on his shot. Dvorak's crashing the net, puts the Canadiens up by a score of 2-1. It's Janot who ties it at 2 after 2 periods of play. Brett Kulak also pinches, and Caulfield finds him, and he's able to beat Saros. That's 3-2. Luke Kunin charges the net, and Savard and Sherratt aren't able to get their hands on him. He ties it at 3 with about a minute and a half left to go in the game. Arturi Lehkonen on a breakaway. Saros stops him. Granlund has a chance with less than a minute to go in the game. Allen stops him. On to overtime they go, and Philip Forsberg gives the Nashville Predators a 4-3 win in overtime. Once again, exciting game. What did you take out of that game other than when you look at the score sheet at the end of the night, you got to be a little bit displeased with the amount of ice time that Caulfield and Poehling got?
Well, that's what I take out of it, is that I'm actually getting more pleased with the makeup of the team in terms of who's excelling. You want Sherratt to excel, because the word is, and some people don't agree with it, but those that are experts in this field talking to general managers say Sherratt is going to fetch a first. So when he plays 29 minutes and the team is competitive,
of course he will. He'll fetch it first.
Yeah, there are people that don't think he will. But
can I take it a step further?
Sure, yeah.
I would trade him as soon as possible.
Oh, of course. Why let him get injured? It makes no sense at all.
Correct.
What if he got injured and he's out for the rest of the season?
Correct. So Brian,
on a first-round draft choice, that's terrible thinking.
Some people have an argument, say, save him to trade deadline. That's when his stock goes up. I say this.
Why?
I send a memo around the league. Ben Sherratt will be traded within the next week. Give me your best offer. Absolutely. We are not going to risk him getting injured. He'll be traded within the next week. That's it. That's all.
Absolutely. And I don't see why a stock goes up at a trading deadline either, because what it means is you've got fewer teams that are in the hunt, because there are going to be some that feel right now that they got a chance for a playoff spot. And as the trading deadline approaches, they'll see that they really don't have a chance. So if you've got fewer participants in a buyer's market, you've got less of an offer. That just goes to show. And the other thing that's obvious too is that the participating team that might want Sherratt gets him now for 55 games instead of 35 games. So they got a better chance to make the playoffs. So in both instances, I don't know why people think that the stock goes up at a trading deadline. I think it goes down.
Correct. And it's not like he's on the hook for a lot of money. So you take $3.5 million and you subtract the amount of games that he's already played thus far. I'm going to take it a step further. Mm-hmm. If you trade Ben Sherratt for a prospect and or draft pick, you just got weaker on paper, correct?
Beautiful.
Which means you just got weaker on the ice, correct?
Awesome.
Which means chances are you're not going to win more games. You're going to end up with a better draft pick, correct? Brian.
I know it. It sounds so terrible, right?
The Marinaro organic tank. This is the players won't do it. But you as management and you as coach, you can do it.
Absolutely.
This is the way you do
I
it.
always say that too. It's like, well, Gorton, you're like trying to prepare for the future. Have a conversation with Dom, and that conversation goes, why are you not playing the kids? Right?
Yeah.
And why is Jake Allen getting burnt into the ground?
By the way, I thought he was fantastic last night.
Fantastic, but
I thought he was fantastic.
As you talk about the organic tank, that's perfect expression for it. So you don't want to see Jake Allen playing all the games. It's an organic tank.
Yeah. Hey, you brought up Jeff Gordon's name. I think I've watched the press conference 5 times. Don't ask me why I do stuff like this. Okay. You probably do as well. It's just that when you keep watching it, maybe, there's some information you may not have taken in. Then all of a sudden you take it in and you start whatever. He really looks like salt. He seems like salt of the earth. Like he just seems like a really, I don't know about you, the impression that you got of him, but I really like his CV speaks for itself. I think the Canadiens have someone very, very interesting on their hands here. Yeah. I think he's going to do a very good job with this team. Call me naive, whatever. I really believe that he's going to put this team back on the right track. But besides all that, without knowing him, I have a feeling the Canadiens hired a very good man.
Yeah, and I really like that. I didn't sense any ego at all there at the press conference. Really a down-to-earth guy, just going to do the business at hand, and he's not going to let some false pride or anything get in the way. I really liked what I heard. And a nice effort in French too. I mean, obviously it was heavily accented, but it just shows the dedication to being a Montrealer. And I think that's really, really well appreciated. Sometimes in our milieu, we don't see that as much, but in the Francophone milieu, that's something that are like, I don't care if that was heavily accented. I really appreciate the effort and thank you.
Yeah, it was appreciated by many, and good on him. I hope everyone gives him a chance, because
I think they will.
As you know, there's been some backlash to the Canadiens hiring an American from Massachusetts as the VP of hockey ops by some people. And you know what? Just give him a chance. People from Quebec, give Jeff Gorton a chance, even though he's an American from Massachusetts. The way an Italian race car team gave one of your own a chance to go on to be one of the greatest drivers in the history of the sport. Just right. Give him the same chance.
Yeah.
Calvi,
he's the Schumacher of the NHL.
Does the Villeneuve, does the Gorton hiring mean a philosophical change in approach? In other words, do they stop with the building from the goalie out backwards stuff?
Well, we can't wait for that, can we? I mean, I can't wait to find out about that. And he's made one move already in Clegg, and didn't that feel right? It's a guy with people that have said, if anything, is a little bit weak on the back end, but he brings a lot of puck movement.
Yeah.
He was an American Hockey League All-Star for the Reign. Big points in Brandon for the Wheat Kings, fast skater, could work on a shot just a little bit, but a player who brings first and foremost puck moving skills.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just a small move, but symbolically, the first move for me is a huge one, because that just shows the enterprising attitude for puck movers. And somebody rebutted to me on Twitter yesterday, well, with, they tried for Weidman too. So didn't that show that Bergevin liked puck movers? And I rebutted with, well, Alzner 5 years, Savard 4 years, no real offer for Markov. So I thought Bergevin's work was piecemeal at best, trying to get a PMD. So we'll see. But for a first move, Tony, I like it. What do you think of it?
Edmondson for 4 years.
To that question?
Edmondson for 4 years. Look, I had this conversation with a buddy of mine this morning, and we talked about what appears to be the differences in philosophy comparing Marc Bergevin to Jeff Gorton. Bergevin's philosophy, albeit some thought it was wrong, it wasn't wrong in a way, because what he tried to do was put together a team that he thought could have success in the playoffs. Gorton's philosophy looks like he's going to try and put together a team that will have more success in making the playoffs, because the regular season is called one way and the playoffs are called another. Marc Bergevin's Weber and Sherratt and Petrie and Edmondson, it looked great in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
It probably looks less great in the regular season. Mm-hmm. The Canadiens, Sherratt, Savard, and Edmondson won't look great in the regular season, but if they get into the playoffs, I'm sure they'll look better than they did in the regular season. So there's the two differences in philosophies there. But yes, I think it was clear for me anyway that the Montreal Canadiens could use two mobile puck-moving defensemen. We'll get to your questions. Sharing is caring. Share this video, comment on your Habs questions. I'm Marinaro. He's Brian Wilde. MJV, the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro. Do you think Martin Lapointe is the next to be let go? Brian?
No, not really. I think the coaching staff is the next to be let go, even if that means that they've gotten the green light to keep going until the end of the season. I think that's the next piece to fall. I think
really
is going to fall. Luke's going to fall. Alex is definitely going to fall. I mean, special teams is 31 out of 32 in the league. Yeah. I think that's the next to fall. I don't think anybody else is falling.
Well,
and then as soon as the new GM is hired, definitely.
You would think that Alex Burrows could be easy to replace because I don't think he's breaking the bank here, despite the fact that he's got a contract, right? As for Martin Lapointe, one of the things we have to keep in consideration is he was on that Bruins team that Jeff Gorton was there, so they probably have a relationship, and he might want to keep him in that respect, or he might look at him as a part of the old guard. But
I get
John Sedgwick's under contract, and they're going to keep him, you would think. So sure. Martin Lapointe's under contract, and they're going to keep him, I would think.
I can't imagine anybody firing a capologist. I mean, what do they have to do with their player personnel?
The big question is, does Martin Lapointe take over for Trevor Timmins?
No, I think they'll – well –
that's what he does.
The last word is, Tony, that the GM might be an agent. That came out last night.
Yeah.
Which
did come up. He left the door open. Gordon did at the presser on Friday, saying that the next GM could be a former player. He could be an agent. Gordon said he was never a player. He was never an agent. So it could be one of those. And the guy whose name keeps coming up is Kent Hughes, who's residing in Boston. Used to represent Vincent Lecavalier, represents now Patrice Bergeron, a former Bruin who's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, Brian.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Oh, boy, talk about building from the middle again. That would be outstanding. Yeah. And add to that, too.
Mind you, he'll be 37 and not 27, but...
Yeah, and apparently, for sure. But apparently, and this isn't my knowledge, I saw it on Twitter, so take it with a grain of salt. That person I saw it from could be wrong, but I'm going to think he's right because there was no fight back on it. That Hughes has an affiliation with his kids and Jordan Harris. And that's a big moment because Jordan Harris is one of the best defensemen not in the National Hockey League today. And Harris has to be signed, and Hughes knows Harris. And if they can have a little bit of a friendship there that can lead Jordan to deciding to come to Montreal, that would be massive because he's a future blue liner in the NHL. And if they lose him, that would be big. That would be really, really big. He's not Sanderson, who I think is the best defenseman not in the NHL, the Ottawa product. But he's
Jake
good.
Sanderson.
Thank you. He's good. I mean, he's really impressive, Jordan Harris, and I actually have a little bit inside track on that.
Tommy,
I don't think that Jordan Harris is destined to leave as much as people think he's destined. The kid wants an education. He's a smart kid, and he wants to learn, and he wants to finish his schooling, and that's okay. Northeastern's a good school, and he wants to finish and get a degree, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it doesn't mean you hate the Montreal Canadiens or you're going to go back into the draft. Sometimes it can just mean I'd like to be smart. I'd like to get an education. That's why I came here, and I'm going to finish it and then start my NHL career.
All right.
That's okay.
So I got some inside information here.
Let's hear it, man. That's
I got information from someone very, very close to Jordan Harris and his situation. For those who are not aware, Jordan Harris was drafted in 2018 in the third round by the Montreal Canadiens. 71st overall. He's been at Northeastern, I believe, for the last 4 seasons. He is regarded by many as the best defenseman not in the National Hockey League. A scout told me that Jordan Harris could definitely play on the Montreal Canadiens already this season and belong, maybe be even in the top 2 pairings. So he has not signed with the Canadiens. If he doesn't sign by the summer, at that point, he's an unrestricted free agent. One of the things that you said is true is that, his focus is on school right now. But another thing is, and this is what someone very close to the situation told me, is that Harris, about a year ago, looked at the Canadian. This is very important. Looked at the Canadiens' blue line and said, "I don't think I'm going to be able to get a lot of ice time there."
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
You trade Ben Sherratt and maybe even another defenseman, and all of a sudden Harris looks at the Canadiens' blue line and says, "I'm going to be a top 4 and I'm going to get over 20 minutes right away starting next season." That's one big way you can sign. Oh, and also, we talked about Jeff Gorton, originally from Massachusetts.
And how many times do you think Gorton has seen Harris?
I would say that he's seen him quite often, being from the area. And by the way, Harris is a Massachusetts boy. A lot of people believe that he wants to play for the Bruins and stuff like that. Here's AG, who says, if I was Harris, I'm staying in the United States.
Why? A lot of Americans play in Canada. Brady Tkachuk just signed for 8 years.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's a question of opportunity.
And Matthews in Calgary and Keith, the father, was somebody that held out.
Yeah.
His career for more money. So, he's passing on that attitude. It doesn't have to be that way. And I don't believe that it is that way. And the only thing that might be in front of that is COVID. It's just a little bit annoying to go Canada, US, Canada these days, but it's not going to be an issue. And Boston is like only 5 hours away by car and 40 minutes by plane.
And hopefully this is our last wave, Brian. Hopefully this is our last wave.
Don't forget too, Tony, that the word on Harris, and again, this is just from talking to people, but the word on Harris is he's a really class guy. And when he commits and he says something, it's truth. And if he says, I want to play for the Montreal Canadiens, that now becomes his truth. And so I believe in the kid, and I believe he's going to be a Montreal Canadian. He just wanted to finish his schooling, and that's okay.
I think it's more than the schooling, but I think there's going to have to be a selling job here from the Canadiens.
And there will be.
But once again, if they trade some veteran defensemen, then I think all of a sudden he starts looking at Montreal before anywhere else. Brian, sharing is caring, sharing the video, and we'll comment on your Habs questions. Dave Lloyd, Brian, for you, do you still consider Patrick Roy a Trojan horse whose sole objective is to unseat Jeff Gorton using his Journal de Montréal pals to create unrest? Brian?
Well, I don't think Patrick Roy has any power in the organization at all. And I surely don't believe that Jeff Molson is going to just answer to the Journal de Montréal's requests for anything. If the Journal de Montréal is running the Montreal Canadiens, then they're in a lot of trouble.
Well, Brian, I would say that if the Journal de Montréal doesn't come out with that front page headline last year that there were no Quebecers in the lineup for the first time in their 110-year history, or what it was, I understand that, but that's besides the point. I would say that if the Journal de Montréal did not put pressure on the Canadiens having a francophone coach and a GM who is probably a francophone from Quebec or speaks French as a prerequisite, I don't think the Canadiens would. So they do have their power, but I'll agree with you. I don't think Patrick Roy has much of a chance. I mean, the other day I said I said he's got zero chance, or 0.001.
Put him at the 0.000.
Everyone knows that. Okay, so I want to get this out of the way because, still, when you talk about Patrick Roy, it touches a lot of people, right? Because he was an idol for some. He definitely is a legend. There's no doubt about that. So there's a strong connection there, and people can get really upset what you say. Let me get it out of the way once again for those who have not paid attention. But his CV is very good, no doubt about it. VP of Hockey Ops and head coach for the Colorado Avalanche for 3 years, coach of the year in year one. been with the Ramparts organization, one of the best organizations in all of junior hockey for over a decade, won a Memorial Cup, served as coach and general manager. Very, very good former player and all that stuff. Proven winner. I got all that. The whole former player, proven winner stuff, they've been doing that with the Montreal Canadiens over and over again since the mid-90s. It hasn't worked, so we can throw that out the window. Here's the deal. Patrick Roy wants to be the boss. Never mind what he's telling you right now. A lot of people say things to get a job. He wants to be the boss. If they would have given him the job, he would have been the first guy they would have approached instead of hiring Jeff Gorton. Jeff Gorton wants to work within a team. Patrick Roy was unable to work with Joe Sakic by his side, one of the classiest guys in all of hockey, a former teammate. They won 2 cups together. If I were to look into my crystal ball, I would say that if Patrick Roy was the GM, it would be just a matter of time before he and Jeff Gorton would not share the same vision. It would be made public either off record or on the record, but it would come out, and then all the public support would go towards Patrick Roy and not Jeff Gorton, and it could spell the end for Jeff Gorton. It would be a nightmare for the Montreal Canadiens. I said my piece. Patrick Roy will not be the next GM of the Montreal Canadiens.
And I'll only add this, that when we try to predict these things, all we can really do is get in the heads of the people that make the decisions. And there
Correct.
only are 2, and it's Gorton and Molson. And from what I know about Molson through history is the one thing he really doesn't like is over-emotional people embarrassing the organization. He likes things being as calm as they possibly can be. He's chosen a hockey op guy who's known for being calm, and he's known for being able to work with people. Remember, he's one of the original people that went into this organizational new thing called that partnership between hockey op and GM with Davidson. They were doing a really good job with the New York Rangers until they protected one of their players and wrote that letter because they didn't really like his head getting slammed into the ice. So
with John Davidson, you were saying, with John Davidson.
With John Davidson. It was Gorton and Davidson. They did a nice partnership together, and it was 50-50, and it was operationally successful. Gorton has that in him. He likes to work with people. His ego doesn't get in the way. So you're absolutely right. I can't see him getting somebody involved who's known for having a big ego and being emotional, and Molson wouldn't like that either. So I agree with you. I can't see Patrick getting a job for those reasons. I see it being someone who, and I'm surprised that Hughes' name is out there so much. I don't really like an agent in terms of player eval. I like the guy to be great in player eval. That's why I like Martin Madden in Anaheim. Assistant GM, longtime scout. Organizationally, I think he belongs with the Montreal Canadiens. That's my guy. I don't think he'll get it, but that's my guy.
But he talked about a former player or former agent probably being the guy, someone to compliment him.
Yeah. If he's got that in mind already, then guys like Madden don't really have a chance. But you put Darsh back in as a former player. I don't know where it's going to go.
Madden's got a great CV. I have to tell you.
Great CV. Fantastic.
You know what? He's
got a good draft record too.
You know what? Listen. I don't know if Martin Madden would take the job. Okay.
I think he would.
But no, not the job of the GM. Hold on a second.
Okay.
But here's the thing, right? There is no salary cap on front office. There's an internal budget. Yes. There's no salary cap on your executive team, your management team, and all that stuff. You know what? I would be heavily in favor of Martin Madden being the director of amateur scouting of the Montreal Canadiens.
Oh my God.
Which is a title that he used to have with the Anaheim Ducks. But you know what? Pay him more money than he would make as the GM of Anaheim or any other team. Give him another title. Give him 2 titles, whatever. But he is a guy that I think the Canadiens have to have in the organization. Now, based on everything we know, I don't think he's going to be the general manager. But they need a guy like that in the organization. I maintain that if you like qualities in Danny Briere and you think there are other qualities in Matthew Darsh that you like as well, try to hire both of them. The Montreal Canadiens need to start developing and mentoring hockey people from Quebec, if that's what they want. Some of them are probably going to go on to other posts going forward. You're still going to have some here. The cupboards won't be empty in that respect. And Martin Madden, part of it, as director of amateur scouting of the Anaheim Ducks, they drafted Trevor Zegras, Troy Terry, Hampus
Big
Lindholm,
Steele, Terry, Big Steele.
Sam Steele, John Gibson, Shea Theodore, William Karlsson. When do you want me to stop? Ricard Raquel?
Yeah.
Not bad.
And these are not top 5 picks. I mean, that's the real, that's, everybody likes, the Oilers. Yeah. Well, it wasn't like a genius move to draft McDavid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like top 5 is going to be successful. It's when you have to draft from, 20 to 30 and you pull it off. That's great work. Because 20 to 30 is a 50-50 prop. And people think, they failed on their first rounder.
Yeah.
Well, if you draft 27th, that's a 44% prop.
Yeah. No, it's
so when in Anaheim they get that kind of success, what was Zegras? 9?
I think Fowler was 12.
Yeah, these are like 65-70% ratios to get a great hockey player at that number. It's not that easy. And they've got Raquel was where Terry was like way down. I mean, these are thefts. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Where was Maxime Comtois was 50th?
Yeah.
We didn't talk about him.
And Terry was what? It started with a 1. I mean,
Terry was 148th.
That's unbelievable.
5th round.
Yeah, that's Brendan Gallagher stuff there.
Sam Steele was 30th.
Yeah.
Brandon Montour was 55th. Shea Theodore was 26th.
Yep, that's 50-50.
Lindholm was 6th. That's the lowest they've ever drafted with him as director of amateur scouting. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, Kyle Palmieri was 26th.
That's 50-50. Second rounder's already down to between 15 and 30%. Start of the second round is a 30% prop. End of the second round is a 15% prop.
He's done
5%. So all of these successes are just complete outliers. When you get an NHLer, that's a complete outlier.
I think he's done an amazing job. He's done an amazing job. More of your questions coming in. Sharing is caring. It's Brunchin with Tony Marinaro, presented by Cherry River Hard Seltzer. Only 90 calories. Eric Diorio, your thoughts? Yeah, 100%. Your thoughts on Gorton building out the analytics department?
About time. That's all I got for you. It's about time. 3 words. Yeah. Do I need to say more? Jesus.
Yeah.
Get it done.
You got the feeling that in the past the Canadiens outsourced for analytics, used it as a reference point, but didn't really attach a tremendous amount of importance to it. Now that's my feeling from the outside. I was not on the inside.
Well, and hockey is a little bit behind, right? Because you look at baseball, analytics is so well developed and accepted. It's like 10, 15 years ahead of hockey. So if you can get to the front of this curve, you could do some damage. The teams that in baseball were the front of the curve, like obviously in Oakland, where Billy Ball was way in front of the curve, made a gigantic difference.
Billy Bean, Theo Epstein, and now Alex Anthopoulos.
Absolutely. And if you can get ahead of the curve in analytics in hockey, you can do some real damage because it matters. We've seen it. We've seen it in other sports. Anybody that was ahead of the curve in those sports was able to, with a minimal payroll, find themselves in successful positions as if they were the New York Yankees, for example.
Brian, I want to say this. I want to touch on the game that they had at the Bell Center the other night, a game the Canadiens lost to the Colorado Avalanche by a score of 4-1. And a fan threw a Nick Suzuki jersey out on the ice. And Jeff Gorton said, I feel for the players and it won't help the situation. I want to say this to the fans. It's obvious the Canadiens are not going to make the playoffs, right? Why are you trying to put so much pressure on them to win now? It will only set them back even more. And, knowing the Canadiens' reality that is, why would you go to the Bell Center if you're so disgusted with the team that you want to throw the jersey on the ice? The Montreal Canadiens season is unofficially over because there's still games left. They're not making the playoffs. Everyone knows that. Their Stanley Cup this year will be the draft that they're going to host in the summer. And when they host that draft, they want to host it. There's going to be a buzz in the building, and we're going to want there to be some enthusiasm. So let them finish as bad as they can so they can have a pick as good as they can.
Yep.
And you know what? Hope for good luck in the lottery, which Jeff Gorton has had twice with the New York Rangers. The first pick overall in Lafreniere and the second pick overall in Kako. Both times, once he won the lottery and once he moved down and made huge progress in the lottery. That's their Stanley Cup. We all need to be at the Bell Center this summer with a buzz that the Canadiens have a chance at the number one pick overall or have the number one pick overall. Just sit back and relax.
Yeah,
and slow, see? That's the way. Nice and slow.
And I will only add one thing, that it was one fan. That's it. It's one fan. And it's impossible to, police the behavior of every human being in every situation. And it wasn't like there were, 20 or 30 or hats and embarrassment that was thorough and 2,000 people with bags over their head. I mean, you just can't police every single human in the world. And it doesn't mean Montreal has bad fans or it's a bad city. It just means there's a bad egg in every single place in the world.
Brian, very much appreciate you giving me 45 plus minutes of your time on this Sunday morning. His call of the Wilde as a shorthanded Montreal Canadiens team took it to overtime in Nashville. There you go. That's on my phone. You can follow him, BWildeMTL. And Brian, I'm putting it out there because I know you love to interact with the fans, so you can ask him some questions that we probably didn't get to. You can follow him on Twitter and ask him. I'm sure he'll enjoy it. There you have it. He's Brian Wilde. Follow the Sick Podcast on all social media platforms. Follow it on Facebook. Follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel. It's absolutely free because this podcast is sick. I'm Marination. Have a good Sunday, everyone. Cheers, Brian.
Cheers, Tony. Thanks a lot.